My name is Dr. Danielle Samuel. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm an assistant professor. I'm an advocate. I'm a dog mom. I'm a wife. I'm multiple things. But I'm honored to be here not only as a moderator, but as someone who understands that being Black and bisexual is not just an identity, it's liberation. Now, I wouldn't be myself if I didn't start us off with an Annalise Keaton quote. To those of you who know Annalise Keaton, a character on a TV show, who's truly given us a mirror of power and resilience. Okay, and so she says, I'm ambitious, I'm Black, bisexual, angry, sad, strong, sensitive, scared, fierce, talented, and exhausted. That layered truth is not just hers, it belongs to all of us who live at the intersections of Blackness and bisexuality. It is a reminder that we're not just one thing, we're not a monolith. And tonight, you'll be hearing from three amazing panelists who I've had the honor to speak with separate from this, and they're such kind souls. And they're going to show us their essence and their excellence is not just a fraction of the greatness that exists within the Blackness and the Black and bisexual community. And as we listen to their stories, they're not exceptions. So I know sometimes we come to these panels and we have everyone on this pedestal, but please note that their stories are not exceptions. They're truly just a reflection of the myriad of ways that we can show up in this world. Being Black and bisexual means that we meet somewhere in the middle of racism and invisibility, but we must also acknowledge that both identities carry a strong, rich history of resistance, resilience, power, and radiance. And I know the statistics tell us that we are disproportionately affected by health concerns like mental health and intimate partner violence, but yet still we rise. Plugging in Maya Angelou here. I love that. And when I came out in the Caribbean on a small island of St. Lucia, mostly Black folks, it was not easy, right? It was stares, it was whispers, it was harsh words. But I've learned not to give up hope because on that small island, we've celebrated Pride now for the last 4 years and just had same-sex intimacy decriminalized. So win is a win. And I take that pride with me today in this conversation with these amazing folks. And as we step into this conversation, I'm really honored to be able to introduce our panelists who refuse erasure. So first, up in my introduction is Kyra Green. Kyra Green is a model, a content creator, and a reality TV star who rose to prominence as the first openly queer contestant on Love Island USA, making franchise history as the first to pair with a woman on a show, on that particular show. And as an out bisexual Black woman, Kyra has since used her platform to champion LGBTQ plus visibility and create space for authentic queer love stories. With a following of over 1.5 million, she shares lifestyle, beauty, and relationship content that centers self-expression, vulnerability, and joy. Kyra has starred as the romantic lead in multiple music videos by queer pop artist Zolita, and she recently appeared in a queer short film, continuing to expand representation across genres and platforms. Kyra combines her creative work with a deep passion for mental wellness, chosen family, and shift in public narratives around bi plus identity, especially for people of color. As a speaker and an advocate, she's committed to reshaping how queer stories are told and who gets to tell them. So welcome, Kyra Green.
Hi guys, thank you for saying, oh, thank you for all of that. That's so awesome. And I'm so excited to be here with you guys and to talk to everyone. And yes, the biggest thing for me is community and visibility. So thank you, Dr. Danielle.
Of course. And we have Nathan Elysium. They are bisexual, non-binary, Black, neurodivergent writer and advocate who centers truth-telling, visibility, and healing. Raised in a Pentecostal Caribbean household, Nathan came out in 2023 and has since used their voice to uplift those at the intersections of queerness, neurodivergence, Blackness, and religious trauma. As someone who's been sober since 2019, who lives with autism and ADHD, Nathan brings vulnerability, complexity, and strength to the stories they share. Their work invites honest conversations around identity, biphobia, masculinity, mental health, and the nuances of reclaiming your truth after being told it's something to hide. Nathan is also on a personal journey of redefining what it means to be a Black man while identifying as non-binary, challenging societal expectations around gender and masculinity. Whether through panels, poetry, or digital storytelling, Nathan creates space for those who often feel erased or silenced. Their voice resonates with those navigating the in-between, and the presence offers a reminder that healing begins with being seen. Nathan is honored to be part of this panel and in community with other Black bi plus voices committed to visibility and liberation. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. I completely forgot I wrote all of that, but I am so honored to be here.
It's amazing. All right. And last but certainly not least is Gattison. He's a genre-defying, chart-topping independent artist, producer, and community builder whose work bridges music, storytelling, and connection. A proud queer artist of color, Gattison has charted 5 times between Billboard and UK Music Weekly, with 2 songs hitting the top 5. He shared space on the charts with Beyonce, David Guetta, Kehlani, and Cheat Codes, solidifying his place in the next wave of impactful dance artists. But Gaddison's mission extends beyond the music. He's long been devoted to creating platforms that bring artists and creatives together, especially those from marginalized communities. During the 2020 election, he united a diverse group of creatives for his song Together, a powerful anthem promoting unity and civic engagement. He's also produced networking events and creative panels featuring talents from EDC, Pixar, and Martin Guitars, building spaces that spark inspiration, connection, and collaboration. Gaddison is currently developing Next Queer Icon, an initiative to spotlight emerging LGBTQ plus talent. Through every project, he continues to lead with purpose, authenticity, and a commitment to collective empowerment. Welcome, Gaddison.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. I'm so excited to get into this conversation.
Me too. I'm really excited for the work that we're about to kind of divulge and discuss together. And so let's sort of jump into it without further ado. Okay, so my first question is around how you define bisexuality. Often, I think bisexuality is defined through like stereotypes and through assumptions, but no one truly can define it for us. And so I want to begin by asking each of you, how do you personally define bisexuality? What does it mean to you?
I mean, for me, I would just say it's fluidity. Since I was really, really little, um, looking up at a TV screen or going to school and having a crush for me, it's always just been having a crush on this person and never had anything to do with their gender or where they came from or their backgrounds or anything. It was just if I connected with this person, that was it for me. And having a bisexual dad as well, it just was a piece of me, a part of me in a way that it's fluidity. It's whatever I like is what I like, and it doesn't matter what's below the belt, and that's okay. It's not an in-between phase or, half and half even. It's just what I choose to, who I choose to love,
Hmm.
That's what it is for me.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you, Kyra.
I think for me, I define it as freedom and fluidity as well.
Hmm.
Um, but like in terms of freedom, not in like the light, breezy freedom, more so in the kind like after you clawed your way out of a cage, kind of that messy and tender freedom. I spent a lot of years slowly unlearning decades of shame from being bisexual. Um, so just being able to say that I'm bisexual now and I don't have to have anybody's permission to define that. It's such a beautiful part of reclaiming myself. And I refuse to like let lies hide me, you know? I just want to be me and love who I love. So that's it for me.
Tenderness and freedom. I love that.
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback off of that, I think to me, I define bisexuality as giving myself permission to be open to all possibilities,
Mm,
and to be all of who I am, even if people don't get it. And I think for a while for me, because I grew up in a evangelical space, um, people just didn't get bisexuality, and it was kind of you're just too scared to say that you're gay. And so you just say that you're bisexual. So, I really cling on to that. Bisexuality is me being able to be all of who I am, be open to all the possibilities, and be that in the face of people maybe not getting that.
mm. Thank you so much, Gattison, Nathan, and Kyra. That was amazing. Um, and we're gathered to talk about, right, that intersection of Blackness and bisexuality. And our earliest understanding of sexuality can sometimes be filtered through societal messages, especially those around race. So I'm wondering for you, what messages early on shaped your understanding of bisexuality?
Um, I think for me, my sexuality, there's like these heavy messages of both race and religion when it came to
Mm,
that. Um, I grew up in a very Christian Caribbean household, so queerness wasn't just wrong, it was like condemned massively. So I was told that being anything other than straight was sinful or perverse, something that would drag me straight to hell. And, on top of that, I was also told queerness was like a white thing.
mm,
Yeah, yeah.
So, either being gay or bi, it wasn't something that Black people do. And if you were gay or bi, you're betraying your Blackness.
mm-hmm,
Um, so those messages like erased me before I even had the words to describe myself. And it kind of made me believe that I couldn't exist as a Black queer individual. And I remember sitting in church a lot, hearing like the pastor preach about homosexuals being abominations and like always feeling my stomach drop to the ground
mm-hmm,
because I thought he was talking about me. So it kind of like broke something in me and I kind of learned to hate myself because of it. And I carried so much like shame and silence. And looking back, I kind of see how those radicalized and religious messages made my closet like even darker and heavier to sit in. So I'm glad to be out of it.
mm-hmm. That's powerful. It's almost like Blackness. There's something around, sorry, bisexuality that belongs not to Blackness, that it belongs outside of that the messages that you were hearing. Yeah.
I know growing up, like for me, my dad, being a black man and being bisexual, he was very strong with me growing up of I think he noticed when I started asking questions and watching movies and just being like, "Well, Daddy, what happens if I like her?" Because he was very open about talking about his sexuality and even the story of how when he is from a very religious background and it wasn't okay. He would tell me stories, honestly, sometimes that made me feel like, why would I ever want to go to church in a sense or be a part of this community when everyone was telling you that it was like terrible and that you were gross and like it wasn't okay and you had to change this part of yourself or hush hush don't say that, you're bi, so can't you just choose a woman? And I also remember him just like telling me the story of how when him and my mom were getting very serious and he felt like once he told her this piece of him, but he had to tell her this because if he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, she needed to know like all parts of him. And that when he thought he was going to say it to her, her response was going to be like, ew, you're discussing like all these things that he kind of was taught growing up about being a bisexual, especially being a bisexual man. And she just kind of looked at him and was like, that doesn't change anything. Like, I love you. What difference does that make? So for me, thankfully, having like that representation and having a dad who did go through those things, I feel like he was very, very strong with always keeping a very positive dialogue around me liking who I like and that there was nothing to be ashamed of. And I think still with outside, things that play into it of like the shows that you watch, and yes, I feel like it was as well to piggyback off of what Nathan said. It's like it's very white. Like I feel like my only representation for a while was like Ellen DeGeneres in a sense, and she like isn't bi. So it was just like I never had someone as well that looked like me, that was on my screen. So I think it was just harder in a sense to like find that identity. But thankfully I did have like support from my dad and I had that visibility. But I'm happy we're doing stuff like this because it just creates more and more of that visibility for others, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think when I was younger, the setting for me is I grew up in the Bay Area. I was definitely a part of the church, so definitely got that, whole teaching around, gay being an abomination and all that good stuff. But I think one of the things that also marked me was kind of a hyper masculinity
Mm,
in the culture. And kind of like, I've seen people get chased home from school for speaking a little too high.
hmm
I've seen people get beat up because they look like they were looking at somebody. So I grew up in a little bit of a rough neighborhood. So there was this hyper masculinity, this masculinity that needed to prove itself by being violent,
mm,
by kind of sticking out your chest and daring somebody to kind of challenge you. And I think one of the biggest ways you can challenge, that type of masculinity is by saying that you're gay or that you're bi or that you find some interest in men, and so I think for me, I was taught at a very young age that, the church ain't safe, the
mm,
streets ain't safe. There's nowhere to be safe, to explore or talk about this in any way, shape, or form. So, and frankly, in my neighborhood, there was no LGBT center. There was no
hmm
resources or anything like that. There was no Zoom, going on and people were talking about it, especially not folks with my skin color and that we're being honest about it. So yeah, that was kind of my experience.
Yeah, those are some of the messages for all of you that shaped your understanding of your sexuality pretty early on. I also recognize that we don't exist as just as one picture of black and bi. We're not just like one thing. So are there other identities for you that shape how you show up in this world? I'm curious about. I want to honor that you all hold multiple identities. I'm curious what those are.
I mean, I feel like for me, being in the creative space and being able to explore, different aspects of that world and also bring into that world something that I did crave more of growing up, which was,
Mhm.
other bi people on my television screen. So being able to kind of bring that into my work that I do in general, but also just not always make these characters that I play or the things that I talk about fully, like you said, based around being bisexual. Like I'm
Mhm.
just me telling my story, and that happens to be a part of it. But I do love in general when there are creatives that find a way to bring that piece of them, but it's not their like their full identity, but people can just see this character that symbolizes someone like them, and that's not like the full highlight of
Mhm.
it. You know what I mean? But yeah, probably just being a creative little kooky chick on the
I
internet.
love that. How about for you, Gattison and Nathan? Are there other identities that shape how you show up in the world?
I would say, I mean, obviously, as a creative, a musician, a artist, that definitely shapes how I show up in the world. But I think maybe something that is just I'm passionate about is seeing people take that journey inward. I
Mm,
always say that the most sacred journey you'll ever take is the journey inward,
mm,
to actually see yourself, to know who you are. And it's actually the most beautiful gift that you can give to yourself.
mm,
It's the most beautiful gift you can give to your loved ones around you, and it's the most beautiful gift you can give to the world, is to really take that journey inward. So a part of how what who I am is just a person that loves to see people take that journey inward.
mhm.
And a part of that is comes out through my music, and a part of that just comes out through conversations like these.
Yeah, I love that analogy, the journey inwards.
I definitely have, other identities that,
Yeah.
I identify with, but I think every identity that I hold still roots back to like my blackness and my bisexuality.
Hmm.
I was saying in my bio, like I identify as non-binary, but I've been in this like reflection period of still identifying as a black man. And like for me, those two things are like they don't cancel each other out. They still sit side by side. Um, but I grew up being told that a black man had to be strong,
Mhm.
no emotions, unshakable, dominant, no softness, you can't be sensitive, all those things. And because I didn't fit into that mold, I often felt kind of broken in a
Hmm.
sense. Um, like I was failing at being black and failing at being a man. Um, but when I started to like embrace my being non-binary, it wasn't me stepping away from my black manhood, it's more so reclaiming it on my own terms. Um, so I love still identifying as a black man and still identifying as non-binary, but there's also me being neurodivergent and being diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Those aren't labels for me. Those are like the way I experience the world.
Hmm.
And sometimes it sucks, sometimes it's okay, but I just learned to understand that I'm navigating a world that wasn't built for me. Um, so those are my identities, and I like can't separate them. Like they're
Yeah.
all intertwined.
It's intersectional in a lot of ways, right? And I think about all the identities that you all hold helps you to sort of navigate this world in a very particular way as well. And you mentioned hyper masculinity earlier on, and I see a question in the chat about hyper masculinity. And I wanted to note that we're going to have questions like a Q&A at the end. So that's like a great question for us to come back to, because I imagine right alongside hyper masculinity are some of the stereotypes and pressures put onto Black womanhood and other Black genders of how we show up in this world. So that's a great Q&A question. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to pivot us to talk about relationships a little bit. Oh my gosh, pop culture has painted a very interesting picture of what it means to be bisexual and in a relationship or lack thereof. It really reinforces the stigma around like being hypersexual or it doesn't exist or minimizing our identities, ridiculing it, dismissing it all ways, shapes, and forms. And then also as a researcher and a clinician, I see Black women talk about this as well. And I see Black folks talk about how it's almost like you become even more hypersexual in that identity when you add on your Blackness, or it's fetishized within relationships or weaponized within relationships. So I want to ask you all, for you, what has it been like to date as a bisexual person, or even more specifically as a Black bisexual person, whether it be in the community of Blackness or in the community of bisexuality or outside of those? What has it been like for you?
I mean, I would say for me, it would be very quick when going on dates if I knew if that person was a good fit and respected me in the ways that I thought, I should be respected, and that it wasn't being,
Mhm.
oh, you're promiscuous, or, oh, does that mean we can have a third and do three? Like that.
Threesome, it's a common question.
Yeah, yeah. Or what do you like more? And just like these kinds of questions where I'm like, okay, I don't think this is gonna work. Where I
Mhm.
always say the best answer is what, my mom did with my dad, which it's just pretty much like, okay, thanks for sharing that. And, and in a sense, because for me, it never should have been this thing of, oh, this makes you highly promiscuous, or you're very, you must be like in that transitional phase, or a
Mhm.
guy getting intimidated because I'm like, no, I'm not just saying that to for your benefit. I've had relationships with women or on a date with a woman, and she's kind of like, oh, then you probably are just going to end up with a man. So I just feel like when dating, there are certain things as a bisexual person that you kind of pick up on of where their viewpoints are of you being bisexual.
Mhm.
And I think it's just very clear to see that. And it's definitely not the most fun to deal with because it's stereotypes and it's not my truth. And that's not how I move through the world. But, I think it's just having to navigate that in the dating world of people just having those thoughts on you before you even really express who you are as a person,
Yeah.
labeling you before you label yourself in a sense.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The questions that they ask or their responses can be very telling.
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, when I read this question, my brain just dumped everything onto the paper.
Okay.
Um, I hate dating. I hate it. Um, Dating as a black bisexual is not simple. It's probably one of the hardest things like I've had to do.
Mm,
Especially as someone who identifies as non-binary but is very mask presenting. I think a lot of bisexual men, we have to carry the stigma of, you know, being down low when we're not down low,
mm-hmm.
or DL. And for those of you that don't know what DL means, it's basically a term used within the black community to describe like black men who present as straight and secretly have sexual encounters with other men, and they're typically married. Um, but we typically have that stigma thrown on us. And for me, even though I'm open with my bisexuality, like I'm out, that shadow still clings. I've had guys ask me on dates, like, so are you DL? No, I'm not DL. And
Mm.
then I've had girls tell me on dates, like, I don't date bi guys, you guys cheat. But you swiped right on my profile and it says I'm bisexual, so I don't. So like even though like I'm openly bi, that doesn't always mean like there's freedom.
Yeah.
Um, Especially like in the black community, like my queerness sometimes gets policed and dismissed as a phase. And sometimes I'm treated like I'm betraying my blackness, and like outside of the black community or like mostly white queer spaces, like my blackness can like make me hyper visible or invisible. Um, and rarely accepted, or I'm often fetishized,
Mhm,
um, or seen as someone's first black experience. So that they like the aesthetic of me, but they don't
mhm,
Mm,
want me.
mhm,
mm,
So it hurts to be in those rooms where I feel like my queerness and my skin makes me feel less worthy and loved?
yeah. Hmm.
mhm.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
stereotypes that come with it.
yeah. I I I feel all of that. Definitely have been in spaces where as a uh in white spaces particularly, um it definitely feels like, and I've had experiences where I'm just not taken seriously. This is more like a fetish. This is more like ooh, this will be fun for the night. This is
Hmm.
more like, oh,
Checking the list.
I don't know how, we can get on this thing, but
Go for
I
it.
just saw some adult content over here, and now I want to like see if I can act that out in real life.
Mm,
And I think that like, it has been really hurtful to be in those spaces because, to be really honest with you, it has felt more like my experience in the church, which was very much, you don't really belong here. You can sit in our pews as long as you follow these kind of rules, but we're not taking you seriously. And I feel that way. I have felt that way in those spaces. I think in Black spaces, it's been, in terms of like dating, um it's just been hard. I don't even know how to describe. I think maybe because there's a lot of miseducation around
hmm.
bisexuality, that there's just almost an ignorance around it. And I'm not saying it's just in the Black spaces, but I'm just saying, like, in general, there's just an ignorance around bisexuality. And so, yes, there are a lot of stereotypes that come with it. There are a lot of questions that you're just like, wait, how did we get there? Like, run me through that equation again. Like, how did we get there? But I, I mean, I feel like in some ways when I first encountered this, I got good at trying to walk people through and explain to
Mm.
people. But I think I'm in my era of like, I'm not explaining. I'm not your teacher. I'm sorry. Go grab a book,
Google it.
go on Google, and figure it out. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at now.
I'm gonna adopt that. Google.
Google.
Yes. I mean, I've also heard the assumption that because you're bisexual, if you cheat, specifically for women, if you
Mm,
cheat with a woman, it's not cheating. And that
Oh,
already speaks to the ignorance of it, the
mhm.
dismissal of the validity of that identity and that relationship too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll move on to this question for you. So we've spoken about the lack of representation that exists. I'm curious what, and if you had to create your own representation in your own sort of makeshift world, what do you think real, meaningful representation of Black bisexuality would look like? What comes to mind?
I
Mm.
think us being shown as like our whole selves and not through
Mhm.
like trauma and secrecy.
Yeah, like a
Um,
trauma dump.
yeah, exactly. Like we barely see stories where we're shown as like joyful, creative, having loving families, being parents. It's always like very negative and very like stereotypical.
Mhm.
Um, so I would love to see a version of the Black bisexuality that I never grew up seeing. I want to see like the soft, powerful, spiritual, and complicated version. I want
Mm,
to see like that meaningful representation that's intentional and that is created by other black bisexuals and not,
Yeah,
you
that
know,
part.
others.
That part.
I got you. I love that.
I
Soft and spiritual and complex.
Mhm.
I agree. I feel like it's showing the whole the whole thing behind it. Like a lot of shows, when they do show a bisexual person, it's like it's very toxic. They're kind of more
Mhm.
edgy and just like off the beaten path. And like you said, going through struggles. And yes, all of that can be true in a sense, but can we also get the happily ever after sometimes? Or like
Hmm.
the really wholesome, cute moments of a family where maybe the dad is bi, or like all those different things, just so that we also have that visibility, because there's a billion straight movies where there's these couples, hetero, and they show their struggles, but they also show how they get through them and how they end up on the other side and how they succeed in life and find community. And I feel like that's just never really shown. You're just seeing the struggle a lot of the time, where they're the butt of the joke in the show, and it's the comedy behind it. It's not just like the full picture. So it would be really cool to see that. Yeah.
Happily ever after. I mean,
Yeah.
you were on a reality show. I also want to see that on a reality show. Like, I
Yeah,
got
no,
you.
and
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
that's the fun behind it. I mean, I have like a terrible story of I was on a show and there were like several other couples, and then there was, two girls, me and this other girl. We were both bi, and for some reason our date was giving each other massages, and it was just like this terrible moment where I was like, this is completely not what
Mm,
the other couples are doing. They're going paintballing, they're sitting at a candlelit dinner, they're doing these romantic or fun things, and our thing is just it felt like being sexualized, and it's just
hmm.
like I feel like a lot of the time producers and people that probably aren't bisexual have these stereotypes, and they're pushing these narratives that are just not true. We are like full people. We are sexual, but like we're not just promiscuous, and we're not just these toxic relationships. So I think just showing the full picture is, I think, the best type of visibility that we can ask for and try to create in our own ways through our music, or like I try to show my family on social media, and just a way of like it can be a positive situation
Hmm.
and a light that's shown on us
Mm.
in that way. Yeah.
I'm writing a petition that you and your family have your own reality TV show.
Come
You got
on, let's
drama
We're
for
get
all
that.
it.
signing.
I'm
We're
like,
all
I don't know if
signing.
we have enough drama for that, but
All
yeah.
right.
No
We'll
drama.
script the drama.
It was good.
Right in. Oh God.
Um, I just honestly think that bisexuality is the best story that could be told. And the reason why I feel that way is because there's so many options, right? Like there are so many different nuances to bisexuality and how it can be represented. And I think that um in terms of visibility, I think that we should have. I see it like a buffet. You know what I mean? Like come at the buy buffet, and we can get you anything you need. You know what I mean? And I think it's time for us in general to just take our power back and stop asking for the power, but to just really be like, yo, I'm creating my own spaces, and you want to come here and dine. I got a place for you at the table. And if you don't, then I'm sorry, baby, this restaurant ain't for you.
It's ain't the
Um,
vibe buffet for you.
you know what I'm saying? You ain't invited to the buy buffet. So anyway, no, but I just really feel like we have the greatest story to be told because there's so much nuance to our community. There's things that I'm still learning about this, and I'm like, that's beautiful, and that needs to be represented, and that needs to be talked about, and it needs to be put on a TV show, put in music. We need to put that on Instagram, you know. So
Billboards.
yeah, that's what I think.
That's amazing. I think folks are resonating with the idea of the Bai buffet, and then
Come
a
on,
whole slew of analogies came for me as
yeah,
well, because I'm thinking the Bai barbecue, the Bai cookout. I think we have something going here
come
with this
on.
idea. So
Listen,
circle
the
back,
buy cookout,
audience.
I'm ready for that.
Circle back. But I agree. I think representation should go on TV should go beyond just for the white cis het male gaze.
Yeah.
Which when I think about the example you gave, Kyra, of the massages, that's who that was, the audience was for
Mhm.
that, right? And
Mhm.
so how do we represent the myriad of ways that we can show up in this world is amazing. I see folks are planning the barbecue as we speak. So please let us know when, where, and how. I think we'll
That
all
part.
catch a flight to that location. Dolores Park each year. I love it.
Oh,
Now
okay,
we
Bay
already have a
Area.
location. Okay, so we've been talking about religion and we've been talking about spirituality, but I really want to just center it a little bit longer, because it is so deeply rooted in the Black community, wherever you fall on that spectrum, right? And so I'm curious for you, how has your bisexual identity intersected with your spiritual, religious journey? How have you reconciled with it? And I'll just open it up for whoever wants to jump in. Please feel free.
It's such a big topic to dive in, but I would say as I've learned more about my own bisexuality, which really has um come as a result of me taking the most sacred journey that I can take, which is the
Mm,
journey inward, and seeing all the possibilities and seeing the nuances that are in me, the intersections that are inside of me, it actually has expanded my definition of God.
mm,
Because if I'm this nuanced, how could I ever put a box or a label on this higher being, right? The reality is like in my opinion, we are such a beautiful representation of the divine because the divine is nuance. The
mhm.
divine is options, infinite options. And so I
Clapping in
think
church.
you see what I'm saying? Come on,
Yes.
somebody give me an organ. I'll start preaching on you. No, but I just really feel like we carry a special glimpse into the
Yeah.
divine. And I think that a part of why there is a lot of erasure around bisexuality is because we show a side to humanity that I think humanity loves to be in boxes and labels, right?
Mhm.
This is nice and neat. This I don't have to think about too much. This I just know it's that way. But bisexuality presents this side of the divine that says, yeah, it could be that way, but it could also be this way. And
Mhm.
this is just as beautiful as this over here. And I think that there's something so beautiful about that. And it's opened up my understanding of love. It's opened up my understanding of the divine. It's opened up my understanding of what true religion is, and true spirituality is. So yeah,
Oh my gosh, I love that. I really resonate with the part where you shared, if we could be this nuanced, how can the divine not be?
come on.
Yeah. Right, Nathan?
How can you say it better than that?
Um, I think for me, 25 years of my life was dedicated to not a good version of Christianity.
Mm,
Definitely a very like obviously Pentecostal fire brimstone type Christianity. And I can't tell you how many times I would pray for God to take away my same-sex attraction.
Yeah.
And like when nothing changed, I thought it meant that God had given up on me.
Yeah.
And so like I would push myself deeper into like church and ministry. So I went to ministry school
Hmm.
for 2 years, convincing myself that's how if I got closer to God,
Hmm.
or the version of God that was here in my head, that I'd be protected from temptation, and same-sex attraction. And I thought burying myself in scripture and service would, keep me straight. Mm.
Hmm.
But, any misstep or like unholy thought like sent me spiraling into like shame and like self-hatred. And like I beg for forgiveness. I promise to do better. And then I keep living in fear of falling again. So I ended up deconstructing my faith. Um, I forgot what the catalyst was. Um, but for some people, when they deconstruct, there's reconstruction on the other side. But for me, it led me out the door.
Mm,
So I completely walked away in August of 2022. And that choice kind of cost me, in terms of like people who I was close to. They just like blacklisted me and
mm,
cut me off. Like this community that I had was all of a sudden just gone.
Yeah.
And if they hadn't blacklisted me from when I left Christianity, when I came out, they then blacklisted me. So
Yeah.
I lost a lot of community. Um, but there were people that stayed that, you know, surprised me. My best friend Eli,
Mhm.
I went to ministry school with him.
Mhm.
Love him to death. He's my brother. I was terrified to tell him that I was bi. Absolutely terrified. Um, and I told him, he was like, okay, and he's like, I love you, bro. Like, I don't care if you're straight, bi, agnostic, atheist. Like, you're my brother forever. And like, hearing that was just like such a joy. I was also scared because I was the best man at his wedding that year, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna be the best man anymore. And then like my old youth pastor, he also is like loved me without condition. Um, and then after I came out, I met this lovely bi couple who have become like my dear brothers, and I know they're on the call. But Mitch and Danny, they've showed me like Christianity is made of compassion and accountability and joy.
mm,
And they've like showed me this version of Christianity that I never knew could be possible. Um, so even though like I identify as like agnostic and spiritual now, like my faith doesn't live in the pulpits anymore. It lives in community, it lives in love, and it doesn't demand that I amputate myself to belong. So,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, here I
that
am
was
piecing myself
powerful.
back together.
Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. It was really powerful. And the idea that your faith can live in the community.
That part.
Yeah.
I would say like listening just to my dad's stories and his experiences. I have never been to church in my life. And for a while I was like, what am I? Like, how do I connect to certain people that have gone through this and whatnot, but I just feel like at the end of the day, I'm spiritual and I connect to God with, like you said, community, the people around me in my home when I'm at the dinner table with my family and we're talking about, our spirituality. And it's hard because I would love to know what it's like. I believe that there's so much community in church. There's a lot of beautiful stories that my Nana tells me and things that I'm like, I wish I could experience that. But I feel like for so long I was turned off from hearing how my dad felt like he was alienated and made to feel like disgusted by himself. And that just really turned me off for a while. So I think it's still a journey of finding, that positive side of it, because I do know that that exists out there where there are, churches that are very open and not judgmental, but I definitely grew up with those stories from my dad and just decided to find my own spirituality within my home and family and friends. So that was probably my experience.
And I think spirituality is very purposeful and very powerful, right? And that you found home in that, that you found spirituality in your home. That's a blessing in of itself. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your thoughts around religion and spirituality and how it showed up for you. I know many folks are probably listening and feeling that as well, feeling the words that you're sharing. All right. Okay, a couple more questions and then we're gonna open it up for everyone else to share. Sometimes a single moment or a conversation or even a relationship, like Nathan shared, can shift how we change how we see ourselves. What has been the most profound moment for you in your journey of acceptance and growth? Anything stands out for you?
Mm, I think it was when I walked away from Christianity
Hmm.
because it was the first time I felt light and like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying, like came off my chest. Um, but it was also the first time I had to look at myself and ask, like, who am I without my faith that I built my entire life on?
Mm.
So I was just kind of standing there, just kind of like no identity, didn't know who I was, trying to figure that out. And in that space, I kind of started like thinking about my sexuality in a way I never had before. So
Mm.
like before even letting my mind wander to the idea of being anything other than straight, like would fill me with terror. Um, I get this knot in my stomach and like a wave of guilt, like I already sinned.
Mm.
But after walking away from the church, little by little, that kind of fear loosened up. Um, but there's this one time, I can't remember if it was in February or March of 2023, but I was watching this show on Amazon Prime called The Legend of Vox Machina. Highly recommend watching it. Um, and there's this character on there. His name is Vax. He's a half elf. I think he's bi or pan. I don't know which one he is, but either way, he's just very confident and like unashamed and not apologizing for who he loves. And I don't know what it was about that, but watching him just unlock something in me, and I just felt this like rush of recognition and like whispered out loud, "That's me. I'm bisexual." And I wasn't scared when I said it. And for the first time, it didn't come like with guilt or shame. It came with like a deep exhale, like I can finally breathe, and I felt
Hmm.
lighter. So, that moment didn't erase like all the shame I carried for years, but it did crack a door open and gave me like the words I needed to say out loud, and there's no going back.
Oh my gosh. It was like being untethered brought you closer to yourself, and then the representation really hammered it in, right? It really
Hmm.
let you know. Yeah.
Over a cartoon elf.
A cartoon elf. Hey.
Uh, um, I think mine kind of came in two phases. So one was I had um, been married to a woman for just shy of 9 years.
Mm.
And the marriage was um, out of religious kind of sensibilities, right? Like, hey, you're supposed to do the straight thing. I was very open and honest with everybody about, my attraction to men and but but then I, try to pray the gay way, all the stuff, right? But
Yeah.
that's context to say that once I, for almost 9 years, tried to pray the gay way, went to all the men's retreats and the, this, that, and the other. Woo, I got some stories. But anyway, did all that, and I was like, yo, it's still not, ain't nothing changed, right?
Hmm.
So one day I was praying and I felt like what I felt to be the voice of God say that I'm not afraid of your questions. And
Mm.
it was like my heart was like jumping out of my chest and just while I was praying. Now, mind you, I'm in the evangelical church, right? So you're supposed to be praying, you're supposed to be focused on Jesus. And so my heart is like in the middle of this, my heart jumps out of my feels like my heart jumps out of my chest. And I'm just like, is it okay to be gay? Because that was the filter that I had, right? It was only gay or straight, right? And so, is it okay to be gay? And I remember doing the Christian thing, right? Put that thing back down, Satan, get behind me. This ain't nothing but the devil. And so, and then I went back to praying, and then it happened again. And I felt like the second time it happened, uh, what I believe the voice of the Lord was just to say, "Hey, I'm not afraid of your questions. Ask me
Mm.
anything you want to ask." And it was in that moment that I felt like I actually, for the first time, had a direct line to love. And it from that space, there was this I guess something that I live by now, this motto: if your truth is so weak that it can't withstand a question, maybe it's not a truth worth building your life on.
Wow.
And so for me, I couldn't even question anything. I couldn't even ask a question. I couldn't even ask if it was okay to be gay, right? And so if your truth is so weak, baby, that you can't ask a question, like maybe it's not a truth worth building your life on. And
Mm,
so, and it was the first time I felt a direct connection to love. That freed me to be able to start to deconstruct because clearly what I had built my life on was weak. And so I needed to deconstruct and I needed to figure this thing out. So that's phase one. Phase two was in the reconstruction process.
yeah.
For me, there was this, I was in this Christian community. It was like a church that was all, they were good with the gays, the bis, the everybody, right? And so, and
Tell us
I'm
the
sitting,
name, please. Drop it in the chat.
listen, Harmony, Toluca Lake, they're amazing. But they let me come up and sing worship, lead the songs for church. And I, in that moment, felt so, I can even get emotional right now. I felt so seen because it was like for all of my life, I was not worthy enough to do that.
Mm,
You can go out in the world, you can go juke and jive in the club, but you can't stand here and sing to your creator. There was something that when they made space for me, it made me realize like, oh, there is more to me than what I even understand. And it's more nuanced than even just gay. Because
mm,
again, I'm saying gay, right? That was the lens that I had on is you're either gay or you're straight. And in that space, I was like, oh my gosh, my connection to love forces me to explore the depths of who I am.
mm.
And it changed everything for me. It changed everything, even about understanding my bisexuality. Love changed everything about seeing my bisexuality.
It made you expansive.
And come on. Now I'm giving it to you. Now preach now.
Now you should check the chat out, Gattison, because we have some job recommendations and letters of recs in the chat for you.
Ooh,
Uh,
Hey,
Gattison.
but Kyra, anything you would add for yourself?
I would say I came out very young, but I definitely, it was hard to find community and also just on the journey of hearing so much of, you know, well, it must just be like this transitional phase, or am I actually a lesbian? Am I actually straight? Am I conf like all that stuff that the outside world makes you feel. And it was also like watching something, but I was sitting on the couch with my dad and I was kind of just going through this thing of like not knowing how to label myself, like feeling all of this anxiety of not knowing who I was. And I just remember we were watching The Greatest Showman and the song This Is Me.
mm,
And I
yeah,
remember
Oh.
me and my dad just like dancing around and like laughing and just like screaming it at the top of our lungs. And that was the moment that I was like, I know exactly who the F I am. And
yeah,
I don't have to choose one or the other or whatever, like I'm bisexual and there's no confusion in that. I don't have to choose and something that I thought I had to do for so long or dress a certain type of way or like be something that I wasn't. I could be exactly who I was. This is me. And it
right.
was just like so nice to have my dad, like I said, along this whole journey of being the person that can really support me and be a healthy, amazing role model for like being a bisexual person. And then, yeah, coming off of the show was a big moment too, just because I didn't know it would really be the response that it was. But
Mm,
I was so lucky. I understand how lucky I was to have my dad. So for the amount of people out there that didn't have that, but because they for the first time saw someone like themselves and then they could DM me and come out to me and I was like hopping on calls with people and doing all that different stuff and that was just for me a such a beautiful community that I had found because like I said, I was more on the shy side and didn't really have other people in my life still that were like me. I had a lot of supportive people, thankfully, but it was just so fun to find community online. And that's like the beautiful thing about social media. So that was just another moment that I was like, this is so cool. It's so
mhm.
cool to like interact with everyone. But that was probably the two moments for me.
I think it's just so amazing to hear these moments. And each of these moments, maybe we can count them on one hand, but they have such a strong, strong ripple effect that they live beyond that moment itself, right? They live in the stories that you're able to tell in this call today. Kyra, when you're calling other people, Gattison, the stories that you share, Nathan, the joy that you have within your identity, it lives in all of those moments. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing the one or two moments that you really connected with your identity. And I suppose that brings us to our last question before we open it up to the audience. Beyond the struggle, right? Our identities can bring us joy and creativity and freedom, as we've heard today. What are the perks? What are the gifts that come with embracing fully who you are as Black and bisexual and the other identities you carry? What are the perks?
I mean, I love not being able to fit into a box.
Oh my gosh, so cool,
I
right?
love that. I feel special.
I feel honored
Cool.
to be picked
Yeah,
to be
like
one of the lucky soldiers.
heck yeah. I'm like, that would be so boring to fit into a box, but I think the most beautiful thing is this community. I would be so sad to not be able to be a part of it and to find other people that are like me and have gone through what they've gone through. And maybe my life looks completely different, but we connect with this. And that's something that I think is so beautiful and pride parades and just everything. Like I love being a part of it. It's such a fun, loving environment once you find the right people, and you find whether it's your family or I always say your chosen family,
Mhm.
community is everything.
Absolutely. How about for you, Nathan or Gaddison?
I mean, there's so much joy. I think I think that for me, um, I think that the joy for me comes in, definitely not fitting in a box. I think, ultimately at the end of the day, for me to be able to walk through as an authentic expression of who I am, you know, again, you have to understand that I spent a good 30 years of my life. I know I don't look old, but I spent a good 30 years of my life playing by other people's rules
Mhm.
and other people's opinions and other people's their relationship to their sexuality, living under that pressure. And I'm like, oh, baby, that's not a way to live. So but I spent 30 years doing that. And I feel like it's just been a beautiful benefit. I think that that's not even covering it. It's literally a joy to be able to walk through life authentically, to be
Mhm.
able to get on this call and talk the way I do and just be me and that be okay. To love who I love and that be okay. And it's, you know what, it makes me feel like, when I first heard about the LGBTQ community, and they say you could come bring anybody anybody who you are, you come with us and you could just experience the fullness of just being yourself. And then baby, I came in here and they put me in so many boxes. And so
Mhm.
I feel like when I actually found my bisexuality is when I was able to break out of even the boxes within the LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
And um maybe unpopular opinion, but I just really feel like inside my bisexuality, I have found true freedom.
Yeah, it's powerful. Thank you, Gaddison.
I try not to get emotional with this one.
It's okay.
I think for me, the biggest perk in freedom has been finding a voice I didn't know I had, um, and not living like as fragmented anymore. Um, just spending a lot of my time growing up, I felt like I was split into different pieces, just Black in one room, straight in another, holier than thou in another. Um, and now I get to just live in one body and one
Mm.
voice and one truth, and that's a freedom I didn't think I'd ever taste. Um, and like from that freedom, like my creativity has sprouted. Like my social media went from being something that's just a performance to a testimony.
Mm.
I use it as a diary. Um, I get to write about things I was once told to hide or that I used to be ashamed of, and I post it knowing it might cost me something, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I don't do it to get acceptance or validation. I do it for the connection because even if it's one person DMing me saying, "Hey, I feel less alone because of what you said," that's art to me. That's the ministry. So my creativity doesn't just sit in that one lane, like it sprouts to different things. And I think embracing my identities, it didn't mean my life got easier because it didn't.
Yeah.
Um, it just meant that I can create without apology and I don't have to edit myself down. Um, and I don't have to write for permission. And like the deepest part of that is like I turned my shame into language and
Mm.
my silence into stories and
Mm.
something that almost drowned me into something that I could breathe through. And that has been the greatest perk and freedom for me.
I'm
Come
almost
on.
speechless. I know, right? I know. I mean, there was so much love being shown in the chat as you all responded, and I resonate, Nathan, with the idea that now we're not a performance, we're a testimony,
Come
right?
on.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
also think about the perk of for others to be loved by a bi. I think is one of the coolest and greatest thing
Mm.
ever. To be loved by a bisexual person is an honor. It truly is. Thank you, all of you, for your vulnerability and your openness. We have plenty of time now, almost 20 minutes, maybe about 15, for Q&A, for questions from the audience. I saw a few come in, but please continue to add them in the chat, and then I'll go ahead and read them out loud. So the first question that I see for our panelist: how do you all navigate non-traditional relationships and fetish or kink spaces? How has that impacted your experience with bisexuality? Any takers? I saw a giggle. I heard a giggle.
And out myself.
Come on, be vulnerable.
I have delved into those spaces before. I've tried polyamory, didn't really work out for me. I've been in kink spaces. I lived in the UK last year, and there's like a lot of queer kink like parties going on in London. Um, but in those spaces, I wrote an article with Zachary Zane about this last year. Um, like being in those spaces, I often feel quite alone
Mm,
in trying to navigate those spaces because they are primarily and predominantly white. Um, and it also brings it back to like being fetishized, especially in those spaces. So it's hard to be in those spaces when you are constantly you're looked at like an object, um, and not human, or your skin color is some exotic petting zoo that people want to take apart. Like it's ridiculous. So it's been hard navigating those spaces. Um, what I have found is that there are like people like a black people of color only type, well, I shouldn't say only, but predominantly people of color like kink spaces.
yeah.
Um, and those are the spaces like where I feel welcomed.
Hmm.
Um, not that I do that stuff anymore. I don't know, maybe. Um,
It's okay. Just keep going.
um, I'm exposing myself. Um, yeah, those spaces just feel very inclusive. Um, and you know, it's something I always tell people, like, if you plan on visiting those spaces, just be prepared for what you might feel and what you might, how you might be treated.
Hmm. It almost goes with the saying, like, if you can't talk about it, don't do it. And I think about non-traditional relationships and fetish or kink spaces. There's a lot of conversation that's needed to navigate it and taking the time to find the space that is most affirming of your identity. To go to your point, Nathan, of identity and finding your community in them. Yeah. But it's possible, right? It is.
Yeah, I just will say a little bit here. I I have visited, a couple spaces. I do think that they're really difficult to navigate if you don't want to be somebody's fetish. Um, I also think that if there's I think that parties like that or environments like that, spaces like that should absolutely have somebody on site that is specifically there to help other people navigate if they are having a little bit of a difficult time, because I do think that it just would be responsible as a producer of some of those events to just make sure that everybody is experiencing the space in a way that's healthy. And not everybody experiences that in a productive way. But that's just my little contribution.
I haven't really experienced, to be honest. I haven't.
I don't know about this.
And that's like focused more on the kink and fetish spaces, but even the non-traditional relationships, I think there's room, if there's communication and clear boundaries for even within your bisexuality to flourish and experience an array of pleasurable experiences and love and connection, right? And so um, all I emphasize is that communication and that connection. It can be possible for sure. So the another question that I see here was just generally about hypermasculinity, not necessarily a question attached to it, but a space for us to talk about hypermasculinity.
Ooh, what you want to talk about?
Well, if the audience has a direction they would like to go, but I suppose if I could offer one, is it's how does that show up for you as you navigate sexuality? But even as a woman, I also think hypermasculinity can impact how our bisexuality is used within a relationship too. So I'm curious, any thoughts around that?
I mean, I definitely think that with hyper masculinity, it's crippling
Mm,
to I think to our community in general. I think whether it's Black community, whether it's queer community, I think it's crippling. Um, because it's in some ways it's insatiable. Like there's never an end to it. And
mm,
so you kind of have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into proving something. Um, and it's really based on the validation of somebody else. Somebody else's opinion has to validate that I'm masculine enough. Um, I think that's shown up in, whether that's um in dating relationships or just how people perceive you when you come out or when you show yourself in whether that's social media or
hmm
just in a space. Um, and I just think that especially, and I can only talk about as a Black man, but for Black men, that is just, in my experience, this has been very crippling because there's on one side this kind of like attraction to this strong,
mm,
masculine, this big thing over here, this caricature.
mm,
And it really just limits the definition of masculinity in general.
yeah.
Um, and I think in a lot of ways, we haven't even really fully explored what it means to be masculine. And I think our community doesn't really understand masculinity and how it intertwines with femininity. And so I think there's a lot of conversations to be had about that, but I do think that this hyper masculinity is really crippling our ability to fully explore what masculinity in its purest form is.
Mm,
And I'm sure that is crippling for it is I'm sure that's crippling for Black women and and the relation to them Black men in that space. And if I'm hyper masculine, then I can't show my emotions and my feelings, and then it's that I know that's crazy. So, yeah.
Yeah, the effects of it is beyond just the male experience.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'd say even like the household that I was raised in, once again, is like even down to gender roles and my dad being a man and what that looked like as a father. And it was always very fluid. So for me, when it came to relationships, I couldn't really be with someone that had to be macho, man. Like I always found when dating men, I was very attracted to the men that also had that softness and they didn't have to be hard all the time and they expressed their feelings and emotions. So I think that dialogue and why a lot of men, I think, struggle with mental health and all those different things is because that's pushed to be so hard and so this and so that. And then, yeah, I think that men can show their feminine side more, and that energy in a relationship can be way more fluid as parents, as whatever, you know? So I think definitely being bisexual, I've always just seen energy based off of who I love as fluidity. And when someone feels like they need to lean too much into this hard side of them, and I'm not allowed to sometimes fall into that energy, like that was always harder for me to connect with someone, man or woman, you know? So it's just like, I've always felt like people can just be more fluid with their energy and you don't have to be that one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely feel that some Caribbean culture like really pushes hypermasculinity on you 100%. Because I know that's what I experienced, like, you know, immediately becoming the man of the house at such a young age. And,
Yeah.
you can't be weak. And there's just like a lot of cultural pressure when it comes to that. And I've also found like it affects like my dating life. Um, like people see me, like they see my skin color first, and
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
they make assumptions about me, thinking that I'm some, macho person, with a deep voice. I don't have a deep voice. I have a customer service voice. Okay. I have to survive in this country. Um, and so like it affects like my dating life, because people just want this really tough macho person, and that's not me. I don't want to be that person. I
Hmm.
like this is why I like identify as non-binary because I don't see myself as masculine or feminine. I'm just like human,
Hmm.
and I like showing both. Um, so yeah,
Thank you all for answering that question. We have a couple more that's come through. Who are your role models or mentors? Anyone come to mind?
I mean, for me, my dad.
Your dad. Yeah, your dad sounds pretty cool. We're waiting on the
Uh,
family show.
At that
gosh,
point.
I'm waiting for
oh
him to
Lordy.
adopt me.
Oh Lord, that would be so
I have a
scary.
couple pennies I can put towards a startup.
Right.
No, we've been approached, but it's like they try to push the drama and all that craziness.
Yeah.
And at the end of the
That's
day, it's just
true.
we're human. We have our moments, but nothing enough, I think, worthy for TV. But yeah, he's been the person that, and it was never like, oh my God, your dad's bisexual, just so you all know. It was just
Hmm.
something that casually like was spoken about sometimes, and
Yeah.
it just felt very natural. And to have that person in my life, someone that I look up to and I could talk to and come out to, he was the person I came out to because he was a safe space and I thought he would understand. Yeah, that was definitely he was definitely my role model and like the person that I looked up to on my journey of coming out and having that support.
That's huge.
So can I be really honest?
Absolutely. Have we not
Okay.
been?
I've been very honest, but I'm about to get really honest. No, no, it's fine. Um, this question is hard for me because um my time in the church was heavily coded in language of mentor and
Mm,
role models and all that kind of
Spiritual
stuff.
fathers.
Spiritual father, come on.
Hmm.
It kind of it really strikes a little chord. It gets on the nerve and it starts tap
mm,
dancing because it's like there's a lot of there's a lot of nuance around that. I do think that I am relearning what that looks like in terms of because I feel like I've experienced, a lot of what I would consider spiritual abuse, that kind of manipulation, that kind of like, I'm taking this role in your life and I'm your mentor, so
Mm,
therefore, and so I'm redefining and still deconstructing, I think, that area of my life in terms of mentor and
yeah,
role model. So that's the current where I'm at right now.
absolutely. And I think that's why I like panels because you speak truth to something that someone's probably feeling or thinking and opens up the possibility that the idea of a mentor can actually be weaponized in some ways. Yeah, that's fair. Nathan, anything you would add? And then we have a couple more questions before we close up today.
Honestly, I can't even think of a mentor.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so let's see. The other question I have in the chat, do you have any tips on how to navigate opinions or positions from other queer people who project their biphobia onto you?
Yeah,
Specifically being impacted by the energy that permeates your spaces, whether in person or social media? Good
I have
question.
one ultimate opinion.
Tell it.
F them. At the end of the day, my mama told me opinions are like booty holes. Everybody got one, and not everybody's is clean. So some people stink. So the me going by somebody else's opinion, this is also coming from a place of, again, I lived under people's opinions for 30 years of my
Yeah.
life. And so I made a promise to myself that, sweets, I have to be authentic and I have to be genuine to me. That doesn't mean that I don't have community that
Hmm.
is helping me to be accountable to um but they're helping me to be accountable to my highest self, not to their opinion,
Of that.
but to my highest self. They understand, they talk to me, they know me, and they're like, Gattison, is that really who you want to show up as? And then we had those tough conversations, right? But I'm not being held to somebody else's opinion of me. I'm being held to my highest self.
Mm, I love that. What stood out to me with what you shared, Gaddison, is the idea that we need to make a promise to ourselves. I feel like that's a starting point for
Mm,
change in what we accept from others. Hmm.
setting some boundaries.
And boundaries. Yeah.
Come on, somebody say boundaries.
Say boundary. You got
Touch
me
your soon
going.
neighbor and say boundary.
Boundary.
Triggered.
You're right.
Nathan. Anything you all would add, and then I'll ask our last question.
I think Gaddison covered it.
Yeah.
All right. And this last question is actually for you, Nathan. How does your neurodivergence fit into your life as a
Oh,
bisexual person?
dear Lord. Um, Honestly, it's hard being autistic and, you know, bisexual because, both of those things get questioned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have a formal diagnosis of being autistic, and people look at me like, "Are you sure you're autistic?" And all those things. But I feel like my autism sometimes makes me more aware of things, especially like rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Like every raised eyebrow or silence, like I notice it.
Yeah.
Um, and so like when I came out as bi, those reactions hit like really deep. Um, and like even going back to dating, like romance itself has been difficult. Like I rarely click with people. And when I do, and I stop masking, because I mask a lot, and I don't like admitting that, but I still do mask because
Mm-hmm.
I have to protect myself.
Absolutely.
Um, but when I stop masking around this person who I think is maybe like, okay, they see me for who I am, they actually want to get to know me, it usually ends up being the opposite and ends up in heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
So, I struggle with that. I struggle with not knowing if someone's flirting with me. And that is
Mm,
a big one. I don't know if you're flirting with me, just tell me. please.
Tell me.
I crave communication. I need people who straight word me because I like the dating culture now does not give that. And like many of us on the spectrum, we carry this fear that we'll always be alone, not because like we think love or relationships will fix anything, but it's because we've mostly been misunderstood and abandoned so often that that level of intimacy or love feels like out of reach. And I've like found myself crying sometimes just thinking about that because the idea of someone wanting me exactly as I am just feels like impossible at times. So it's hard. It
Mhm.
sucks. I definitely struggle. I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat that. I struggle with it a lot. Um, but I just try and remember that, I want to be with somebody that doesn't want to shrink me down. And I deserve that. And, my bisexuality, my blackness, my autism, ADHD, that's not a liability. It's an invitation to know me in full or not at all.
Mhm.
And I will block you with that not at all.
Yes. Emphasis on the block you if it's not happening, right? And I think, yeah, we're all deserving of love, to be loved and to give love, right? I think that's at the core what we all are desiring and deserve. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. I think tonight was truly a reminder of the realness that exists at this intersection of Blackness and bisexuality. Thank you for all your questions, for being here and participating. I think it speaks volume, especially on Bi Visibility Day. So again, happy Bi Visibility Day, everyone. It's a great way to end it off. But our conversation doesn't have to end here, right? Keep it going. Keep having these dialogues with folks in your life. And I think that's it, folks. We're all done. Thank you so much for being here.